SVU 2 Electric Boogaloo, baby. That's right, Disco Fever. No, wait, hang on, that's not Disco Fever, that's just me recovering from having an allergic reaction to walnuts. So, sorry if my voice sounds off, my throat did try to recently kill me. It's another day, another week, another episode, and another chance for one of the longest running cop shows on TV to try and actually get some good damn trans representation in it. Spoilers. Doesn't look good.
Boys with breasts get more money on the street.
Yeah, don't make her for a pro.
However, the episode that we're covering today, that of Season 17's Episode 3, is a whole decade later than the previous one that we had discussed. There's been a whole lot of chances in the world by that point, and also within the show, to change. We had started having the transgender tipping point, that moment in time where trans people started popping up on screens more and more with shows actually using trans actors, and also having consultation on the trans inclusion to make it real and relevant and useful for audiences to subconsciously base their stereotypes off of.
Is it because I'm transsexual?
I knew it.
And I knew you were a bougie bigot.
For SVU, the character of Elliot Stabler is no longer in the main cast, which is probably a good thing, seeing as that was the character who seemed to absolutely love dropping as many slur words as possible and literally attacking trans people. No, instead we have replaced him with Ice-T, the meme character that everyone knows from this show because it's just Ice-T, a guy I'm sure has never done or tweeted anything incredibly transphobic. Oh no. Oh, double no.
I guess the apocalypse is imminent.
The bit that I blurred on this picture, because I don't think I can show it fully on YouTube, is of course a penis, and it raises a lot of questions. The major one being, where did Ice-T get this picture from? And why was it on his phone? And also, Jesus Christ dude, you were supposed to do better than the last guy. Now, to further appropriately set the bar for this episode as low as it should be set, and to hopefully get you to watch the rest of this video, Transgender Bridge, as it's called, sort of falls into a weird trap where it kinda pits black and trans people against each other in the way that it approaches the tragedy at the heart of its narrative. And that's never a great thing to go with as a writer. Yeah, it might be possible that SVU has less improved over time, then they might have just adjacently moved to a different kind of transphobia and screwing shit up. With that teaser out of the way, it's time to get on with it and discuss the episode itself.
These are their stories.
Thankfully, Transgender Bridge knows how to launch itself right into the action by going straight to our trans character waking up and getting ready for the day, interspersed with this random black kid also getting up and getting ready for the day. I'm sure these two random people are not gonna crash into one another at any point in the preceding events, but I quickly just want to acknowledge that SVU has gone for a trans person here who is apparently very early in their transition, still having a bedroom full of elements reminiscent of their time as a boy, and also being pre enough that the show doesn't feel the need to cover up this child's chest, something that they would absolutely presumably do for a cis girl with breasts. Oh, and of course it's probably evident by this point that this trans femme character called Avery Parker is played by a cis guy, a casting decision which I am sure was explained away by the directors and producers saying that oh so oft heard line of, well you see we only felt it made sense having a cis guy play this character who hasn't fully transitioned yet, otherwise it would visually not make any sense. Despite the fact that you can find trans actors who fall into a range of different points of transition history, and if you really needed to, you could edit at what the point the character is at to match the actor that you hire for the role. That really just isn't a great excuse for not hiring trans people, except just saying that you couldn't be bothered going through the what can be immense casting effort to find one, and I don't personally find that a great excuse. It's just a terribly accurate one whenever this kind of thing happens.
This is a transsexual woman we're talking about, and if you want that, you should call somebody else.
I get it. We used to have boys playing the role of girls back in classical theatre like Shakespeare, but we don't live in the 1500s anymore. Queen Elizabeth is dead. Both of them. The Spanish Armada has been sunk, and we let cis women play cis women roles in TV. Shock horror. Back to the episode at hand. We see Avery Parker put on an actually quite nicely chosen femme outfit and do their makeup, to the approval and acceptance of their parents, who are clearly pro her life choices and gender identity, so thumbs up so far for showcasing a family dynamic that should be encouraged and indicates how everyone in it is happy because of the support.
Love the heels, but be careful in the park. They'll catch in the grass.
Mom, I'll be fine.
Yay! Good step in a right direction for SVU. Sure hope they don't tank it. The perfect suburban white life of Avery Parker is contrasted yet again with this black teen whose mum is unfortunately not home because she's working a double shift, and there seems to clearly not be a father figure in the house at all of which is a little bit stereotypical for the black family that the show is going with here. Like, absent father and overworked mother. Wow, I wonder which playbook on portraying black people they stole that from. Must be every police show ever.
Why are these police shootings occurring? Well, it's because there is an absent black father.
We see a bit more of these kids' lives, and we learn the name of the black kid. His name is Darius. And then finally, these two collide together when Darius and his friends see the dude in a dress on the bridge, a dude in the dress that they briefly debate the status of, and which leads to Darius deciding to go and find out by getting physical with her to determine it.
Check out this dude in the dress. That's a tore-up girl. Only one way to find out.
Okay, let me be immediately clear here. This is not a good way to interact with a trans person in public. Like, just leave us alone. You don't have to make our lives and our identity your problem. You don't have to get involved. You can just mind your own business. Avery gets surrounded by the group. They call her a he, she, and a tranny. Great. There's the slur words. I was worried they were not going to turn up this time, but they managed to find a way to put them in. And Avery finds herself in the middle of a very hostile crowd of people pushing her and some demanding that the group beat his ass.
Can't be a girl, Mom. Get away from me.
Beat his ass!
An immediate leap to a very scary, very transphobic, and very plausible situation to find yourself in as a trans kid, especially when kids are encouraged to see you as less than human and worthy of mockery/assault by the media that you consume and the adults in your lives. Kids are already cruel enough. They really don't need encouragement, and yet they absolutely get it when it comes to trans people. Despite Darius's little sister trying to get him to leave Avery alone, he smacks Avery in the face, steals her camera, and then while Avery is trying to retrieve her camera, to the mockery of the other people claiming that she must like Darius due to her getting so close to him, she gets pushed over the bridge and falls to the ground. Immediately, everyone in the crowd who was baying for this violence towards Avery runs rather than help her, including Darius, because I kind of feel like they know that they might get into trouble, especially seeing as all of them were being recorded by a bunch of people during this event, and it saw everything that was happening. Now, immediately from this occurring, I think it's very clear that Darius was in the wrong here. He instigated and attacked Avery, he mocked her for her transness, and he also accidentally pushed her off the bridge, sure, but none of that would have happened if he had just stayed in his own space. As it currently stands, this whole thing seems really cut and dry right, morally speaking.
You one of them he-she's? Come on, slut.
Well, wrong. Because we're talking about an event involving two groups for whom legal and law enforcement involvement can never be cut and dry. Black people and trans people do not have good experiences with the police and with courts. both deal with additional scrutiny for who they are, as well as dismissal of their suffering because of it, all of which absolutely does tie into the core issue that SVU takes with this case, and also goes a long way to feeding what I think is the most racist and most transphobic thing that happens here. Trust me, this is all gonna make a lot more sense in like 40 minutes.
She conscious? In and out. And she's not a she.
I mean, we immediately see what I'm talking about when the SVU officers turn up to the scene, and the cop immediately tells them that the she is not actually a she, she's a boy in a dress, which makes them a special victim, right? Something which none of the cops try to push back on that rhetoric of, and just instead make the comment that, oh, yeah, must be a transgender.
Transgender?
Boy dressed as a girl, that makes her a special victim, right?
Hey, thanks guys for continuing the work of lumping all trans women under the category of not a she and just a boy in a dress. I'm sure the trans femme community must fucking love you guys for the stellar work you do in continually reiterating the very attitudes that led to Avery getting attacked in the first place for who she was. Like, Jesus Christ, I don't see how they can possibly take any stance against trans bullying in this episode, one of the prime instigators of negative stereotypes around trans people for a long time has been Law & Order SVU itself.
Cheryl's a man?
I'm talking about Cheryl being a man.
The cops then use a little thing that you might call police intuition if you're a bit of a Blue Lives Matter person, but that I would call racist stereotyping to work out from the mention that the kids who attacked Avery were black and she was white, which school both groups went to, seeing as there is a rich private school and a poor public school nearby.
Private Felix Adler Academy, public Shirley Chisholm.
3 guesses which kids went where.
I mean, I would love if the episode revealed that, nope, Darius went to the same rich school and this presumption that he must have gone to the poor school because he was black was in fact leaning into a negative idea of black kids, but unfortunately, SVU is kinda all about stereotypes being true and reliable, so don't have any hopes because they're just gonna get crushed, honestly. We then cut to Avery in the hospital, with the SVU people asking her about what happened, and we get it laid out how trans kids feel about things. Avery stating how they were giving her the look that indicates they see her as a freak who needs to learn a lesson that often goes quite quickly to violence. I mean, I know we are kind of already immediately leaping into that misery porn that I have previously mentioned about SVU. The misery porn which takes a trans person and fucks their life up for the sad enjoyment of the cis audience, but at least Avery isn't dead instantly after getting introduced, so I know that doesn't feel like a win, but it does mean that we at least get a little bit more character development from the trans person, rather than just having them be a trans corpse who only speaks in the depressing reality of trans statistics.
What look is that? The freak needs to learn a lesson look.
This scene is nothing that we don't already know, but it serves to make the parents of this trans kid and the cops involved really, really sad as they learn from Avery's side the facts that this was a targeted harassment and bullying that involved hate crime-esque language and motivations, alongside no real participation from Avery except for just being the victimized target. Yet again, like I said, if this wasn't about to get all wrapped up in a race discussion, it would feel like a relatively simple case of who the victim is and who the perpetrators were.
Hey, what's up with the skirt?
Excuse me.
He asked you a question.
As we also get pointed out to us by one of the parents involved, this is not the first time that this has happened, and every time that it has, the police have done nothing about it.
This isn't the first time. And the local precinct never follows up.
We will.
Hey look! It's that mention of cop-based discrimination towards trans cases because they don't care to investigate. Though this time we're reminded that we have our good person cop on the case. Or at least the cop that the show always desperately wants us to think of as a good person. Olivia Benson. She always sticks up for the minorities and tries to help them. except for all those times that she doesn't or can't or won't.
I've seen plenty of trannies.
My problem is this he shit.
Okay, yeah, not the best qualifier right there, but I'm riding right off the last SVU episode where Olivia watched a trans person have their entire life destroyed in what should have been a pretty simple self-defense case, but ended up becoming a horrifying reminder for everybody what happens to trans people in the system with no real positives or happy endings out of it. Like I said, SVU is really a master of doing misery porn for minorities like trans people, and so I wouldn't expect anything greater in this episode. Seriously, expect this to go downhill. It's going to be a lot easier for you if you do.
They all begin after it started, but you get the idea.
Ice-T pulls up all the videos from social media which show what happened at the bridge, videos which confirm Avery's story about what happened to her, and also give visual IDs for the kids involved in directly bullying and harassing her. Though I think an important thing to note here, and something SVU does briefly bring up, is that everyone there is responsible for what happened. They all encouraged the attack, and they didn't get involved to stop it, becoming implicitly involved. It represents the transphobia that exists so strongly in the system and in society that nobody thought this was a problem that needed to be stopped, and in fact were perfectly comfortable cheering it on.
All these people watching, nobody helps.
How long do they go on?
Till the fall.
With this information, the SVU squad then head on down to the poor public school with all the black students, as we previously mentioned, because yet again, stereotypes are the bread and butter of the average police procedural writer, taking what can be potentially somewhat true facts and embellishing them into monolithic truths that then further influence how the audience perceives those things to be reflective of that exaggeration. And we get further confirmation of how little the kids here care about what happened to Avery, calling her a freak show and questioning why she did what she did, as if the very act of existing made her worthy of being hurt and possibly killed.
You watched a person get assaulted and thrown over a bridge.
I didn't touch that freak show. And why is he wearing a skirt?
Darius gets brought in along with his friends, all of whom respond to the police with an awful lot of hostility, a hostility which, let's face it, is reasonably fair for any black kid in America to have right now. It's not like the police have done themselves any favours, and no amount of propaganda from shows like this one, which try to make the cops into people who are at least fighting to try and get justice for the right people, has done any work to make minorities more accepting of law enforcement. We immediately see where the kids get their less than stellar attitudes towards trans people from, as one of the kids during an interrogation claims, despite the overwhelming physical evidence of what happened, that it was Avery's fault for being all weird and a tranny in their face, and his mum reinforces his position by saying that the cops should be talking to Avery's parents for letting that boy walk around dressed as a girl.
That tranny started it.
That boy goes around dressed like a girl. You should be talking to his parents.
Like I said earlier, what chance do kids have when their parents spread the exact same rhetoric? And I would at least argue, on SVU's side here, that they are portraying this as an issue. I mean, it's nice to see that after 12 seasons, now Olivia takes issue with misgendering, with a trans person getting called a he/she, because she certainly had no problem with it when it was a police officer calling a trans person a he/she back in the day, but heck, at least she seems kind of exasperated by these kids using that language.
He's one of them he/she's.
Wow. Why would anyone do that? That's not the issue.
Yeah. Thanks, Olivia. Real hero of the community, I'm sure. I mean, let's face it, the show here is still absolutely doing the bare minimum to really counteract all these slurs, and to make them seem like anything more than just something sort of mildly shitty. Darius's mum turns up just as the other kids have pointed the finger towards him as being the one who actually pushed Avery over the bridge, accidentally, and she does her best to make it clear that Darius is a good kid, who does all the good kid stuff.
Darius is a good kid. He takes care of his little sister. He goes to church.
Let's see, tranny.
Something which can absolutely still be true, while at the same time they actively harassed and bullied a trans person into a violent incident that led them to being in a hospital. Okay, You know, maybe a good kid wouldn't do that, now I say it out loud. You can be a complex person who takes care of your younger sister and goes to church, while also still engaging in bigotry that hurts someone. SVU is really building towards a question for the audience here that I don't think any of us want to really answer. A question that I'm pretty certain the show does not have the capability to give a nuanced take on. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but right now, this shit is worrying.
This kid seems genuinely upset. The other two, they just think it's funny.
During the interrogation, we learn that Darius did what he did because he didn't want his friends to think he was gay. He still engages in a bit of the same downplaying that his friends did, where they don't really mention how he smacked Avery in the face and stole her shit. And also there is the constant misgendering of Avery that nobody bothers even trying to address, because as far as the fucking show is concerned, trans identity is not really worth going to the bat over, and that acknowledging who we are is just one of those optional things that has absolutely no bearing on us at all and isn't considered rude as fucking shit. Darius is, despite all of this, very much sorry for what he did. And then Avery gets brought into the precinct to make an ID of the person who did it, because they want to avoid having the court see all this as circumstantial evidence.
They look smaller in there. Scared.
Well, they should be, Avery.
During this process, Darius's mum approaches Avery and her parents and talks about how her son is really sorry for what happened. And Avery then pushes Darius's mum into asking Darius why he did what he did. Something which is kind of weird, because this is like the third time Avery has asked people to do this. Does she know something that we don't? Does she have some sort of like gaydar or something that lets her know that Darius is actually a secret gay kid covering for it by being hostile towards queer people? That's my bad prediction, because SVU is nothing if not a show that loves to pull out twist after twist on you to keep the narrative moving along and sufficiently engaging to the audience. I mean, where we are currently, everyone is dealing with shit. Darius is in a very precarious situation because of what happened, Avery is fucked up in a wheelchair, and Darius's mum has to bring him into court tomorrow despite the fact that she is supposed to be working a shift and can't afford to really take a sick day off to suddenly appear. It's complex, the kind of complexity that needs a lot of effort to work out and see the threads of it, and the last thing that needs to happen is for a show to play some kind of oppression Olympics between the two minorities thrust into opposing sides of this case. I might have tipped my hand a little bit too soon there on where things are gonna go. Let's move on to the next scene.
Are you the Parkers? I'm Darius, isn't it?
Mrs. McRae, now may not be the best time.
Our next scene is a scene where a cop tries to learn what the deal with trans people is, specifically asking it like this.
What makes a boy decide to be a girl?
So, you know, not exactly starting from the most understanding point of view with regards to trans people, and the cop that explains it to him does a, frankly, piss-poor job of explaining trans identity, but does at least get the male cop to recognise that trans people are not transitioning for frivolous reasons by asking him if he would ever have put on a dress or a skirt back when he was in high school. It's kind of a C- primer for the cis audience to think about trans experience. A real somewhat start in the right direction, but no actual meat to give us anything to work with. That meat really needing to come from the trans kid at the heart of this, a trans kid who has already gotten very sidelined in what is meant to be the case involving them.
You were a 14-year-old boy once, and would you put on a skirt?
No, not a chance.
We then skip ahead a little bit to the next scene that holds relevant information for us, wherein we find out that the other boys in the case are getting probation from the council, while Darius is getting pushed towards 3 months in juvie because he was the one who pushed Avery over the bridge. SVU at this point is kind of putting us in the same camp as Darius's mum, namely that this is unfair because the push was accidental. But I mean, the council person is right about the fact that everything that happened there was because Avery was transgender, and because these kids instigated and then got aggressive with her when she tried to get her camera back.
He was touching me. Sorry, my boy's not prejudiced.
I was just afraid.
Like, it's somewhat bizarre how quickly the show has moved the trans tragedy here into being represented not by the injured trans person in hospital, but the hard-edged legal representative who almost seems to be coming down on Darius really hard while letting his friends off. Possibly for racism reasons. What is happening in this episode is a rough interweaving of various groups and the nuanced interplay between their lives and social struggles. A nuance that SVU does not have the skill to display adequately, and instead seems to be falling back constantly on basic ass bitch attempts to make a victim for the audience to feel sorry for here. Darius writes an apology to Avery, an apology that comes along with a bunch of drawings because he does yet again seem to be very much sorry for what happened, despite downplaying his role in it, and also still engaging in the exact same attitudes towards Avery that led to it in the first place. So, I mean, baby steps, I guess. And the apology seems to be a heartfelt one that does make Avery feel better, and feel as if he does mean it. Something which can be pretty important, because Avery speaking out would let Darius get off lighter.
Did you tell him I was in the graphic novel?
But then Avery randomly suddenly dies.
You have to wait outside.
Oh god, there's still 22 minutes left in the episode, and my trans character is already dead. Come on, SVU, what the fuck are you doing to me here with these brutal and frankly cruel twists? Like, this could have been a nice case of us seeing Avery come out and defend Darius, and then they become friends because of their shared interest in graphic novels and drawing. But nope, nope, nope. It's misery porn all the way down, baby. No happy fucking moments at all. No sweet endings that encourage positivity for trans people and don't mix up transphobia with racism in a way that is only going to make the audience confusedly try and find a victim in a case that has victims on multiple different intersectional levels, thanks to the legal system and how it treats people. I am so unbelievably mad at SVU right now, because this right here, is the most transphobic thing it has done yet. It isn't the slur words or the misgendering being thrown out like it's fucking Christmas at the Daily Wire with about as much pushback from the police as they would get at the Daily Wire. It isn't the transphobically motivated assault which took an immediate backseat for other topics very quickly. It's the fact that our place in these shows only seems to be as a thing for the audience to get sad for before we are unceremoniously killed off to further tension. Great stuff, guys. We didn't even get more scenes from Avery which sought to humanise the trans person before she died. I mean, as far as they're concerned, she served her purpose of being alive long enough to identify who attacked her and to make some comments, and now she will further serve her narrative purpose by being fucking dead and motivating the racist law to aggressively push for punishing Darius more harshly than it would, presumably, a white person. Thanks, SVU writers. It's nice to see where we get to stand in an episode ostensibly about a trans case.
1 minute Avery's fine, and then she's gone just like that.
What happened?
You called it Transgender Bridge. We're barely in this fucking thing. SVU immediately gets to work on that by making it clear that the death was directly caused by the fall and the femur being fractured. The parents are heartbroken, and now this case is called the Avery Parker murder because Darius is in serious trouble, as the DA wants to push to charge Darius as an adult with second-degree murder and a hate crime to punish Darius visibly. As the DA says, there's an epidemic of hate crimes against trans people, and so they need to make a stand.
We can, but we won't, and I want to attach a hate crime.
Okay. Wow.
Which the SVU squad obviously gets a little annoyed at because they argue that surely another case is a better fit for doing this over, rather than, you know, pushing to try a child as an adult so you can lock him away for longer, specifically a black child. It is at about this point that trans people stop being a real thing in this episode. We move away from being anything but a tool for the cops to attack black people for, and this is sort of the thing that feeds the whole racism transphobia ball that SVU has jumbled together to play with. Our struggle is merely a baseball bat with which they want to add to the black community struggle. And in so doing, SVU is basically diminishing the trans tragedy here, while also emphasizing the racial tragedy in a way that moves it into the scope of stereotype.
We can't wait for a more overtly evil perp. We have to draw a line.
It's the misery porn thing again, except this time because they can't possibly misery porn further on a trans person who they fucking killed, they have to misery porn on the next adjacent minority for the audience to feel bad for, which is black people. And trust me, if you think you're sick of hearing the word misery porn, how sick do you think I am of watching SVU engage in it? The complex thing here, a complex thing that of course SVU doesn't bother engaging with, is the fact that what Darius did was a hate crime, but of course it is a hate crime that is born from the peers around him and the society he was immersed in, which made him act that way.
Okay, white girl.
SVU views the hate crime as just a legal bludgeon for the city to bash against Darius, when what we really need to be discussing is how that opening scene and the direct harassment it showed was filled with a hate that led to death, and that hate needs to be better understood in where it came from. Something which the show doesn't bother really going into. I mean, shit, they barely touched on the parents of Darius's friends basically excusing their child's behaviours because they were done to a trans person. Also, hang on, I've just realised something. All of Darius's friends' family members that came in were women. We haven't seen a black father figure this entire time. That's gotta be a little bit racist, right? Like a tiny bit, to not have any black father figures. Yet again, this well and truly is a case where the trans person not having died would have gone a long way towards better discussing these ideas. But then we wouldn't have the shock twists to make you feel like shit when you watch the episode. Darius gets arrested, which sucks because we see his family getting torn apart. Avery has her funeral, which sucks because we see her family and friends getting torn apart, and we see Avery's parents making it clear that they would never have wanted to push for Darius to be locked up as an adult, and that Avery herself would have wanted forgiveness over punishment.
Tell the DA that's not what we want.
Lisa, please.
It's not what Avery would want.
I mean, it's a shame that she's fucking dead and can't speak for herself here, and that the asshole law is doing it instead, but hey, that's SVU. Should really get that emblazoned on a shirt or something, or at the very least a sign for whenever stuff happens in this show and nobody's able to do anything about it. Oh, a terrible thing's happening in the law and the cops don't want to bother fixing it? That's SVU. A bunch of shit happens, the court case occurs, and it does not look promising for Darius, as everything seems to suggest that Darius was the main person in hurting Avery right up until we get to Darius's art teacher, who points out how Darius had never had an issue with LGBT people from what she had seen, and had in fact actively tried to stop bullying in the school, including apparently bullying against a gay student.
Including one instance, a student I believe to be gay.
I'm not 100% sure what happened between that event and what we saw happen at the start of this episode, but what happened at the start of this episode definitely felt a lot like bullying and targeted harassment. What with them pointing out a trans person, going up to her, Darius saying we should check to see what she is, saying slurs, mocking her, hitting her, stealing from her, and ultimately pushing her hard for touching them with her trans body. I don't know, I guess people can have a bad, bigoted day, I suppose.
Let's see, tranny. Come on, slut.
We're gonna get in trouble!
This teacher further says how Darius himself suffered a close personal loss from a cousin being shot, and then pushed himself hard after that to try and become something, to not just become a statistic. An interesting comment, considering how we literally just saw a trans person become a statistic this episode, and all of this stuff being done to try and humanize Darius and to make us feel sympathetic for him, firstly, makes me think that this fucking kid is not going to have a happy ending, but it also makes me feel more and more as if we're going to just ignore the trans tragedy that happened at the start of this. I don't think Darius deserves to be tried as an adult. I definitely don't think he deserves to deal with additional scrutiny thanks to his race from the law, but he does still need to have some accountability from someone and from himself for what happened. He does really need to have it drilled home, and the audience needs to have it drilled home too, why what happened occurred, and how to avoid that in the future. That's not obtained by locking a kid in prison, but it's also not obtained by pushing the trans aspect to the side in favor of a different struggle entirely.
I know the video looks bad, Your Honor, but Darius is not a bad kid. He has a good heart.
We can and should be having both conversations at the same time and trying to align their discussions in a way that produces fruitful discourse and lessons for the audience. I'll get back to the trial, where the teacher finishes up by saying that Darius has a good heart and just has never been exposed to trans kids, and that's why he did what he did.
He's never been exposed to transgender people, and I think he just got confused.
Let's see, tranny.
Yet again, I really wish this episode had not gone where it had, because it's basically having to make these excuses to try and get a kid out from a sentencing that they don't deserve. And that pulls the audience away from seeing other issues brought up by SVU here. It's just a bad setup and a way of handling this. I mean, we literally have a doctor turn up who uses the trans panic defense. He goes straight for arguing that Avery was so different from Darius that it freaked him out. And thanks to his poor impulse control as a teenager, he did what he did because of it.
Avery was someone very different, someone other in ways that were threatening to a boy.
That does not sound like a good position to be building as something to fall back on. It's basically a medical person arguing that any boy up to their mid-20s has a fair reason for attacking someone that is different from them just because of, well, that's their biology. I don't see how having that argument come up helps any side, especially considering that all the build-up to the element which that argument is built upon is a series of events where these boys consistently chose to aggress the trans person rather than walk away. I mean, this is an exact logic that the prosecution leaps upon here. The prosecution, who we are meant to see as bad people because they're trying a teenager as an adult to make a point about hate crimes, a point that I just wish we were not involved in, because like there are only 10 minutes left here and I don't see how this can end well. And the prosecution raises a lot of flaws in this medical position and what it indicates for legal ramifications, points that I've already made. It addresses the fact that claiming how hate cannot have motivated Darius because of how little exposure he has to trans people is a strange claim considering how he threw out slurs about the trans person, that he approached the trans person because they were trans and attacked them for it.
Yet he deliberately approached her. He called her a tranny.
He was posturing for his friends, yes.
It ignores the fact that hate can very easily be passed on to kids through media and family and the society around them. Yet again, I don't think the answer is to punish the children aggressively, but I don't think the answer is also to act as if what they did was just a case of boys being boys and reacting naturally to outsider elements. Yet again, nuanced stuff that SVU is not playing with, because for them, one side of the law has to be the bad guy here, and one side has to be the victim they want us to feel sorry for.
I felt sick to my stomach. I feel sick all the time now. Yes, I know how it feels.
Darius then reveals when he is on the stand and being pressured that the reason why he went after Avery was that he doesn't know what the reason is. There was no real deep reason for the bullying that happened, it just sort of happened. Something which I guess strikes down my earlier guess that Darius was a closeted gay, and really makes me question why SVU made such a big deal about finding out from Darius the reason for his bullying if it was just going to end up being a red herring that showcases the random brutality of bigotry and life and death.
Ask him, please.
How do people enjoy this show? It's like non-stop shit being thrown at you, featuring cases that just make you feel terrible. Actually, I'm guessing it's the same kind of people who made murder mystery YouTubers and crime podcasts into one of the biggest online industries. The same kind of people who find death and pain and suffering to be tantalizing stuff to enjoy while you relax in the bath. Darius gets a big boost to his case though, because Avery's parents come out and tell us the moral of the episode. namely that they don't want the tragedy of their kid dying to lead to another family losing their kid to the prison system. A message that I wholeheartedly agree with, but do think that maybe the show could have handled significantly better, rather than pitting trans and race topics against each other in a fight for who gets to be on the side the audience cares about, and also who gets to be the real victim of the episode.
Mr. McCrae saw Avery as other.
Darius knows that what he did was wrong.
It's a complexity that cannot be summed up so easily in a few short sentences like SVU tries to do here. But before we go celebrating for Darius, let's just wait out the end of the episode. I've been surprised before by this show and its desire to jump you with another shock tragedy twist at the end, and I don't want to start acting as if it's over too soon, counting chickens and eggs and whatever the fuck that aphorism is.
It's gonna be okay, isn't it?
I hope so, Miss McCrae.
Ultimately, SVU lands on the judge deciding that in this case the best way to, in their own words, ensure that violence against protected classes is reduced is to have Darius be fully punished under the law, and declares him guilty, despite the wishes of the parents and the ghost Avery in advocating for forgiveness.
I was moved. However, Darius McCrae, I find you guilty.
Yup. This child's going to jail for a long time, and we see racism here getting a big support from the system with no real ability to stop it from SVU, because that's what they always do at the end of the fucking episode. They just go, well, that's the law, and we see trans people getting used as a weapon for enacting that racism, all in the name of giving the audience that upsetting ending that they must surely love, because every SVU episode featuring a minority ends this way. They always end badly. It never goes well, and the show just fucking cuts to next week with nary a care about it and goes on, like the audience is able to go on without really caring that much about minorities in their own lives. Sure, you feel sad for a second. SVU makes damn sure that you feel pretty sad about what happened to both of the poor kids in this case, but heck, that's just how things are, you know? Trans and black people gonna suffer and die and deal with cops and judges whether they prosecute and attack them after all. Our cops did the best they could considering everything at the end of the day, and that's just how justice is, says SVU. And it's that cold, lifeless, bitter while still being ultimately supportive of the system that does its status quo that I think really does just epitomise the racism and the transphobia here. None of us were ever gonna win. There was never gonna be a good ending with a good moral message and something for the audience to take away about us. It was always going to go this way. It was going to always end with everyone miserable and not a single actionable piece of media representation to uplift you. It's like I said in the last SVU episode. It feels like all of this stuff, rather than being these real and harsh views on how the world works, are actually just threats. Open threats towards whatever minorities happen to be involved about how their lives are going to be hellish and end bloody.
Come on, Avery, stay with me, honey. Stay with me.
The only people doing great are the people already on top, who don't become the victims, and ain't that some shit to learn? I'm just amazed this show went on for as long as it has, and that it has such a vast audience. Because, like, how do you keep coming back to it? I've only got another, 4 trans episodes, and already I think I'm developing depressive trauma about that. However, this is something that needs to be discussed, because we can't always learn from the good moments. We need to look at the shows that did things badly, or who are negative, to better understand what went wrong and how things can be handled differently. Also, SVU is very popular. All of this serves a purpose, and that is the light at the end of the tunnel which makes analysing stuff like this worth it. I also have a really high tolerance for transphobia, which is why I've really taken to this role that apparently nobody else really seems to want to do. So yeah, this SVU episode was pretty bad, for all the reasons I've already outlined. If you enjoyed this video, how? Seriously, what the fuck's wrong with you? If you managed to stick this video out, then I hope that I was an adequate accompaniment for at least entertaining and educating your way through the narrative shitpile that we dealt with. It's kind of like being in a foxhole, really. We're family now, considering what we've been through. And much like family, I'm now going to ask for some money that I will never pay back.
We just shared a foxhole, you and I. And still you're gonna do me like this?
That's right. You can help support this channel and my eternal goal of getting through all trans representation by going to my Patreon and subscribing there, or going to my Ko-Fi and giving if you only want to do a one-off payment. It all goes a long way towards helping to keep this channel running and the lights going, paying for stuff like internet, food, power, rent, and of course, cats. The cat who has grown very sick at this point of me picking him up to display him here, but at the end of the day, I owe you a little bit of Merlin, at the very least to make up for what we went through. Ow, ow, ow. Those in the $5 and up category should be scrolling past the screen right now, and I really do appreciate everyone on there for helping to show me a major reason to keep going. That reason being that what I make is important enough that people want to pay to have it around. I know that the niche I occupy is a rather small one. I can't think of many other creators who consistently cover trans content in media, and so I do feel like what I'm doing... Jesus Christ, sorry. And so I do feel like what I'm doing is at the very least important for filling a major missed gap in trans discourse. There is also plenty of space, especially for people who want to talk about trans rep and gaming or anime, topics that I rarely ever dive into or touch. I would love for there to be more people doing this. Regardless, I want to yet again thank everyone who supports the channel, and also thank everyone who watched this video all the way through. It means a lot to me, and I hope that you manage to have a great day after this. You know, don't let bummer episodes like this one get you down, because the best thing we can always do from the negative stuff is to learn and to try and push people to do better.